I would like to introduce everybody to James McIntyre, our moderator for this evening. Please give it up for James.
G'day everyone, thank you very much for coming along to IT Martini Hour number 7. And the topic for the conversation today is basically how do we go about building better software. The panelists, we've got Doug Ross, the CTO of Western Southern Financial Group. We've got Geoff Crawford, who is the Director of IT for Healthcare Waste Solutions. And then we've got Geoff Pearson, who is the Managing Director of KIZAN Technologies. What are some of the practices that are important for building better software?
My first view is, do you really need to build it or should you buy it? And it's funny in this day and age, I still hear of people that want to build an accounting system. How many of us would build an accounting system? Now, there are applications that you really do need to build because they're unique. We have one. It's a customized, believe it or not, billing system, but in our industry there's some real specific things that we do provides us a competitive advantage. But for a lot of the other stuff, you say, do you want to build it or do you want to buy it? And I know that may be offensive to some of you because in IT you have people that are very creative and they really like to build stuff. And there are other people, and I fall in maybe in the other camp, that I'd rather apply it. I don't care about the building part, just make it work and let's do something with it that provides business value.
What we see generally, as far as the best practices go, is organizations that get a specific list of functions they want to get out of an application. We see 3 different processes going on in almost every organization. The first process that we see is up near the top. These are the people who are making the decisions and paying the bills. The second set are from this middle management, I'll call it operational, right? And then down at the bottom, we have that end user community that's actually going to touch the software. And we have to take a slice out of those and take it back to the organization and restate the goals they're trying to achieve with this.
We have to build around the customer. You know, the end user is the most important stakeholder, and what we like to do is actually do quick prototypes and demos and better understand what are the customer need. I tell our developers, we have 2,500 salespeople in the field, and when you make one mistake as a developer, you multiply that by 2,500 people encountering that mistake.
Whereabouts do we learn how to do these practices? How do we learn to sort of be business analysts? How do we learn to sort of manage projects better? How do we learn better processes for handling software?
If we were to go out and grab a specific methodology and say this is going to solve all the ills that we have suffered over the past, we found that none of them did that. No matter how well we embrace them, right? We bring in the practitioners, and that wouldn't solve the problem. The technical people wouldn't want to match up with the practitioner of that methodology.
What 3 top items should I do so that I can start developing better software?
Well, I think number 1 we talked about earlier, and that is getting the voice of the end user. Another area I think Doug talked about was prototyping. A third level is having some testing protocol that the entire organization understands.
We try to act like a consulting organization, and in doing so, we try to be very proactive. I think that there is a tendency in some IT shops, not ours, but in some IT shops to say, you know what, the business really has to articulate all the requirements. Well, I'm sorry, but the business is not going to articulate all the requirements for you.
You have to push back because a lot of IT professionals now know what the right business processes are, and sometimes you have a user that's very good, but they're just way off track, and you got to push back and say no, or maybe more politely you say, well, we could build that for X dollars, but the only person that wants that function is you. So do you really want to do that?
Okay, do you think that software is better developed by just getting them to say, oh, IT, I want this, and the IT people developing it, or basically getting them to do the requirements by themselves and giving it to IT, or by IT and them sitting down together, investing a lot of time and coming up with a different answer?
I think the most successful build projects have been the third option that you mentioned, which is you get the IT folks and the users in the same room, because otherwise you're throwing stuff over the wall at each other.
The business has got to make that investment, spend the time to devote to figuring out exactly how the solution is going to work. And if that doesn't occur, I'm sorry, it's really not going to work.
All the buzzwords about agile software development, what does that really mean for me as a business leader, and how would I use it in my company?
It's about eliminating waste in the process. So, not that requirements are bad, but excessive requirements can be bad.
The idea is that we're going to get these much more rapid prototypes out in front of the customer and be able, the user community even, not just the customer, and let them touch that and let them change it and work with them on the fly. There are other processes that work with that. We use something called extreme programming, where many times we'll actually have two programmers working on the same thing at one time. But extreme programming and agile has worked very well for us.
It is certainly not appropriate for every project. Agile is wonderful when you've got a front office application and you're really trying to understand the customer experience. Now, that being said, you're going to have other products that really are suitable for a traditional waterfall method. And in our world, it's financial products.
My view is that nowadays you don't have time to spend 6 months, a year, 2 years building a system. It really comes down to what are the 20% of the time that gets you 80% of the requirements, 80% of the business value.
What is the trend for security? Is it something you add in automatically now, or is it something you charge extra for?
I'd say a best practice would be build it in from the beginning. Have it incorporated as a core process.
Security in software is analogous to safety in automobiles, right? Remember the days when, unsafe at any speed, right? Well, today, it's no longer expected that an automobile would be shipped without a safety restraint, without airbags, without whatever. Now, safety is a competitive edge, right? The safer a car is, the more likely somebody is to buy it. The same thing with software.
How do you deal with it when there are a lot of people who are sort of saying to you, they're sort of saying, we want these features done in this time frame for this budget, and it's just completely and utterly impossible?
We try to appeal to their sense of reason and go back to the PMI training and draw the triangle on the board and share with them that here's the three sides of this triangle: the features, the resources, dollars, and human, and the time, the schedule that we're going to release.
I go after the 80-20 rule because they always ask for more than what can be delivered. And it's kind of like, okay, I hear you, but... And a lot of times if you deliver the 20% that gives you 80% of the value, they're not as concerned about the rest of it.
In a larger development organization, it's really critical that people prioritize correctly.
Do you have any best practices that you might share with system conversions? Thank you.
Of course, the users all want all the historical data brought forward, right? Well, a lot of times that makes no sense because it's in a different format. You'd spend almost as much time trying to convert it as you did building the system you're putting it into.
Has your business been very careful in articulating a CBA, a cost-benefit analysis, in doing that conversion?
One of the things that we see most often is this attachment to the old data that is very, very laborious to bring over. My advice would be, if you're facing one of those, consider third-party services to filter and clean that up.
Get a round of applause for the panelists. Thank you very much for your information.